So welcome to the second half of Me and You Always, the Summer of Love panel, the first of what's looking like to be many open discussions in regards to where we go next as an industry in the midst of this Brexistential crisis. What I'd quickly like to do first is pass you over to John Mottram from the PRS, who's going to talk about how close we were with the safe harbour discussions to finally starting to find some framework and rights within the video streaming platforms and how this has changed that landscape.
Thank you. I've been told. Is that close enough now? Can you hear me? Good, thank you. I thought, in that it's come up a number of times this evening, and I thought, and insofar that my job for the last 18 months, actually, my job for the last 18 months was saying the word safe harbour. My job for the last 3 weeks has been saying the words leaving the EU. So I'm not sure that's a good thing. So for contextualisation, we touched briefly on this early in the earlier session. What is safe harbour, or it's called hosting defence in European law? It effectively was set up in 2001 to ensure those that provided the pipes and the infrastructure to support the internet weren't liable for the works they carried. So let's think about that for a second. When the Commission impact assessment around this legislation came out, it talked about the servers in the sides of offices, and it talked about the pipes under the ground. So you couldn't sue BT for illegal content, for incitement to hatred, for child pornography. That was the purpose of the safe harbour debate. That was the purpose of the safe harbour legislation. What it has become is an excuse for user-uploaded services, YouTube, Vivo, Vimeo, Dailymotion, to argue that, and SoundCloud, until quite recently POS licensed them, to argue because they didn't put that work there, because they didn't upload that song, your work, onto their service, they haven't got to pay you for it. Right? Now you think about how many millions and millions of times your works are consumed on user-uploaded content because a piece of legislation says you can't sue us, sue the uploader. This is the biggest problem today with the streaming market. This is why Spotify is running an ad-funded service at a loss. Because it has to. It has no choice. It has to compete with YouTube. Right? Where were we with this? We have spent the last 18 months convincing the European Parliament, the European Commission, of this problem.
And there's some of the, again, going back to the US-UK thing, so we're the only people actually bothering to look at it and wanting to make changes.
Yep. And they had admitted there's a problem, they'd recognised the need to change it, and they had agreed in principle to change the legislation. They are about to change that legislation. They are about to try and give more power to rights holders to force these services to take a licence with us, to take a licence with the labels, so you guys can get paid when your works are used. That's going to take 2 or 3 years to go through the European Parliament. It will then become a European directive, at which point the UK will leave the European Union and not subject to EU law. And we will start again. In the UK, the Digital Economy Regulations 2004, which introduced safe harbour law into UK law, are going to have to be changed. So we have to fight this in Europe. It's 60% of the music industry's international revenues come from Europe. What works in Europe is good for UK artists, but when we have to fight it here. So I think when we talk about this, I couldn't stress enough how important this is. This is the one message. If you want to go and see your MP on a Friday morning at their surgery, this is what you should be talking to them about it. Because this is undermining the business model of the music industry.
You said it far more eloquently than I did, with a lot less swears.
No, more swearing. Come on, that makes me laugh. No, if we've got to go and see our MPs, I'm up for doing that. Is everyone else up for doing that? Yeah, go and see your MP. Go and see your MP. That's what they're there for. That's absolutely what they're there for. And you know what? Most of them are all right at their jobs.
Okay, so the second point, probably leading on from that, and I think you're a good person to start with, is how we can mobilise. Where do you think we go next as an industry, leading on from Kate's point, really, in regards to unionisation, price of membership fees, how us as artists feel? Because I think, I don't know, maybe I'm speaking for other people, I'm projecting a little bit here. I feel like it's getting harder and harder to get our voices heard in regards to rights, in regards to the big conversations, whether that's due to the ownership of streaming platforms, whether that's due to the ownership of video streaming platforms, whether that's due to how parent companies that aren't based in Europe that are running services based in the UK are able to dictate our rights. I mean, I'd like to pass this one to everybody. So I'd like to start with Rhoda.
Well, essentially, I mean, what I said before, I think the only way you can organise as a group of workers, which is what we are workers, is through a trade union. In principle, I've always thought that. However, in practice, the MU was not fit for purpose, not for the likes of us, but they are seeing the error of their ways. And it wasn't me that did it. Honestly, other people have shouted at them before now. However, there is a point, as you very well put earlier, is that it's 150 quid. Now, it's 150 quid if you're Paul McCartney or if you're my son who doesn't earn anything from music. So that clearly doesn't make sense. Back in the day when you had to join the MU to be on top of the pops, there was like a stepped membership. So if you didn't make much money, it was this much. If you made a bit more money, it was this much. And I see no reason why that can't be reintroduced. That makes perfect sense to me. Also, the other thing, because kids are they're making music and uploading it to SoundCloud and not getting anything for it, not getting any money for it. And so I said to my son, you need to join PRS. I said, oh, it's free, I said. But then I found it wasn't. It was 50 quid. And that also, I still can't understand why it has to be 50 quid. I know I was explained by the guy who I was told runs PRS, you can't, it cost us too much money. But the thing is, the reason I'm a member is because it was free to join. I didn't join, I had other things to pay for, and I was able to join PRS and get money back from them. They do charge you for it, but they don't charge you until you earn money back. But then if kids are making music, but then I suppose that the streaming argument has to come. If they're making music and they're uploading it, it's being streamed by other people,
yeah, but
they aren't paying.
Just on that, because that's for any artist in the room. That's quite an important point. I spent half my life as a head of digital in record labels arguing with artists who go, I'm really, really anti-streaming. And then they themselves upload to YouTube or SoundCloud, which is now licensed SoundCloud, we should say in some places. But for artists that are in the room, to be anti-streaming and then willingly give your music away on platforms that don't pay you, like, artists need to get a little bit smarter about what they're doing in that respect. And so many do it. Like, number one selling acts I've worked with, I've had this argument with. So it's kind of been informed as well about what you're doing and, and where you're doing it. So it completely sidestep there, but just it's an important thing when you're willingly giving it away to places.
No, I totally agree. I mean, I have said that. I said, but you're uploading your music to SoundCloud, and yet you're not joining the one place that could actually get you some money back. I mean, like, I don't know, 0.00% of a penny or something.
So while we're on
this, the point.
So while we're on this subject, just right out to the room, if you are, let's just have a quick raise of hands if you are from the artistic community, if you're an artist performer. There's a few of you. How many of you are members of the PRS? Members of the MU? No, so one.
MU got a bit of work to do.
One, okay. And then one last question then to the floor. This one's open to everybody. Do you think that organisations that take a percentage of money that comes in should be charging membership fees? If you say, if you agree that they should be charging membership fees whilst taking a percentage, raise your hand. And if you disagree, raise your hand.
One or the other. Yeah. Take a cut
A lot of it. Take a cut or take a fee. I think that's a very valid point. Can we, Jamie, can we give this guy a mic? Just, that'd be good.
I just feel it's a bit rude to cut the cake at both sides. I've worked for companies and made money for companies that cut the margins on both ends of their deals, and that's what companies do because they're there to serve their shareholders. They're there to give dividends. However, if you are placing yourself as a service that is going to return an investment to an artist that has made an investment into their music, into their art, then you can't charge them for the privilege of taking their money away from them. It's just a bit fucking rude. Sorry, excuse my language.
Okay, I feel like, John, I should give you a right to reply on that.
John, everybody!
I think I'm a pair. I think I sort of enjoyed talking about Brexit more. Look. Two points I would make here. First, this is a one-off joining fee. This is not an annual fee that we're charging. And I agree with you, but here's a fundamental point. Of our 119,000 members, a significant portion of that don't earn any income. Right? So then your question becomes, should those who do earn an income subsidise those who don't? So for a what?
Welfare system in this country.
And indeed they do, and they do already. And so, the vast majority of the cost of operating PRS is borne by the top 2,000 members. So we're talking...
By Paul McCartney.
Well, indeed, he would be a top 2. But that £50 covers the registration of that member, their bank details, establishing their rights. It's a one-off fee at a time when our membership's grown by 75,000 in 10 years and looks set to grow continuously. I take your point, but again, we're trying to find a fair system that works for all of our members.
I understand what you're saying there. I'm going to sound like an arse now. Apologies. But
Go on, son.
the PRS, in my experience, as a former venue owner and a DIY promoter, okay, it seemed more about collecting money than it did about paying artists. Now, as a DIY promoter, many of the guys that I was promoting were liable to get zero money because there's no way that you know how many times I played one of Sam's records in 2004 on my jukebox. However, you would charge him the same as you would for any other artist. However, as a venue that decides to have a jukebox in one of my bars, I would get charged the same as Brixton Academy or whatever. And that's how it felt. It seemed like most of the money you were spending was not necessarily on reimbursing artists, but on collecting money to reimburse the artists with and how much of it gets back to them. Now, I'm sorry, I know that that's not the point of us being here tonight. I'm not trying to be anti-PRS. We've all had checks off you and we're all grateful for them, but...
I just make two points, and I acknowledge the points you make, and we are a membership organisation owned by our members, operated by our members, managed by our members, and we should always operate in the best interest of our members. The 2 points I would make: one, last year, PRS for Music processed 2.5 trillion lines of music data. That's more than Visa, that's more than Barclaycard. That grew by 250% last year. It will grow again. So we will be processing trillions and trillions of lines of data. That is expensive. And you have to draw a line. We're the only society in Europe that sends someone to every single festival to pick up set lists from those. We have to reach a point where it says a pay-per-play scenario is just not economically viable for our members. You're right. Music recognition technology is coming. We're investing in it. We'll continue to make that work. To your second point, PRS takes between 10 and 11% commission. That makes us the most efficient society in Europe and one of the most efficient societies in the world. I'm not saying we're perfect, but you can put your rights in the Greek society and take 35% if you want.
Or you can put them in the Spanish Society and they'll buy themselves a helicopter. As a venue owner, though... Yeah, as a venue owner, I mean, you'll probably be... I hate turning all these things into things about how much we hate the PRS more than Brexit. But I think, in fairness to John, we should actually say they have actually just carried out a tariff LP review, which is the main tariff that affects live music venues. I'm actually signed a non-disclosure agreement, so I can't tell you what's in it. If John told you, that would be fine. But let me just say that I've heard that there's quite good news for music venues in it. John, would you like to comment?
No. We'll quickly move on to Sammy to talk about some of the ways that in that
it's just purely that there's a lot of incredible technology out there that our industry is so incredibly slow to adapt to. But there is audio.
Can you break it down for us a little bit? What it is?
Fucking hell! Who's got Shazam in their pocket on their phone? Yeah. So that's the technology we're talking about. You know how it clocks every song that you play. So that technology exists, and the fact that venues haven't been, and collection societies, and I'm not going to have a go at anyone, been able to make that work, it is a different thing. But that does show who plays, and there's also different initiatives like Spotify have an initiative called Soundtrack Your Brand, where they're employing a different technology for playing music within venues, which currently requires a secondary license in all the places that it's launched, in addition to a localized license. So there is technology there for a lot of these things, but I mean, as someone that works in digital, I can't tell you how frustrating it is to work in the music industry in digital sometimes when we have a lot of technology that we don't necessarily utilise. But those things are there, and I expect that all the trade bodies will have to look at them when they come in, they start being used often, as to how they impact all of the things that we're talking about.
I'm just going to... This is... We got off topic a little bit because we're talking about PRS, but can I just... No, it's a really good example of kind of one of the problems that I almost see this as being an opportunity, and that's a very unusual word to use in this conversation. But the point is that for years and years, we've written all the conditions of the music industry based on the top end of the music industry. Like, you can see it in support band contracts. I don't know about anybody else, but I've seen a support band contract with 4 fresh lobster written on it. I mean, they didn't get it because we're not. It's a £50 band, but the point is, it appears from the top downwards. And what you're describing about the discussions with the PRS, we have been pretty successful in our conversation with the PRS, okay? And what Sam's trying to do here is to kind of almost galvanise a grassroots artist movement in that same way. And I don't want to sort of send off everybody in some kind of stupid mission or whatever, but I'm just saying the representative bodies within this music industry have been very responsive to your Paul McCartneys and actually 95% of the musicians.
Paul's getting a lot of mentions tonight.
I'm going to speak for Sam, if that's okay. What I am trying to do really with this is to have a conversation, and I want to thank John for coming. Do you know what I mean? He's somebody that's been standing and lobbying for us, and I think that this conversation needs to be about how much more we can get involved in the existing infrastructure, more than turning on the existing infrastructure. I think we're in a situation now where the number one thing that we need to do is find the ways that we can get involved. Because we're going to be left out of discussions like we've been left out of these discussions on a national political thing. And this isn't just about the music industry, this is about the scientific community, this is about every industry in this country having a place to ask questions and to be involved. So I really just want to, out of all the big industry bodies that we approached, the PRS sent their A game, and that's great. So thank you.
Yeah, PRS are here, and I just want to say that I'm not having a go, because I actually am a member of PRS, and I'm very grateful to PRS for the work that they do. Simply because when I do a gig, I can tell PRS I did a gig, and they just say, well, actually, they haven't got a licence. That venue hasn't got a licence. We'll find out about that, which means that they didn't even have a license for live music at all, and they would, you know, had I not been a member and not reported it, that would not even have got found out. So that kind of thing is really important. And yes, I didn't want to turn it into a PRS bashing thing. I'm saying that because PRS have gone out there and made that agreement with someone like Spotify, that's why I think, SoundCloud, I mean. That's why I think it's really important to make it accessible for young people to start joining these organisations, because not all of them are going to become, I don't know, you know, they're not all going to be Predator or something like that, so they trot out a tune every day or something like that. But some of them might be, and it only takes one of those tunes to do well. So I just think these are your trade bodies, these are your industry, you know, this is part of your industry, and if you want to get organised, if you want to make a difference, these are the people you have to get on board with, as well as, because they will lobby on your behalf. But if they don't know what you want, this is why I keep saying it about membership and things like that, is because if you don't know what I think is important, you're not gonna, you've no reason to change it, have you? And that's why I mention it. So I do think it's important, that thing you said, go and see your MP on a Friday morning. Do so, but maybe ask PRS what it is you'd like. What do you want us to tell them?
I think that's a good place to leave this, because I think that otherwise we're going to become a discussion on the PRS, and I think that is no, that's not a criticism. I think it's some really valid points have been raised in this. Do you know what I mean? These are conversations that sometimes people have, you know, backstage at gigs or in the pub, but these are conversations that we've got in front of video cameras and on audio. Do you know what I mean? This is an open discussion. This is an open submission discussion. You know, we've got to empower the people that are fighting our battles across from the grassroots to the Paul McCartneys. Because I'm sure if Paul McCartney was here, you know, he'd have a lot to say too. I feel that the idea that we've chosen Paul McCartney as the big bastard rich guy, let's pick one of the bad ones. Let's pick one of the ones that hasn't done all great things for a load of us. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know why, but anyway, like, let's go to a nice peaceful subject.
He did write the frog chorus though.
We're gonna have to move on from this, and I feel like now that we're at peace, let's talk about freedom of movement. You know, I feel like that's a nice peaceful place to head to next. So I'd like to start with Rao, who so far has been the effort, you know, has given the kind of ethical and moral reasons for freedom of movement. I think that we're not just looking we've got to look at human beings outside of the economics and start to look at it as citizens of a global race. And I think you're a great place to start with this.
I guess the first thing would be about the sort of, again, harking back to just that word community, just anything that enables, like, okay, so our band has been touring Europe for years, and anything that enables, there's WhatsApp groups with like 100 kids in from all over Europe who are just like, wouldn't know each other. So anything that makes the world a bit smaller, that introduces people to different cultures, different countries. I mean, it's the same for me. Like, the furthest I'd been from home before I started a band and we started doing all right was Guernsey, the exotic island of Guernsey. And now I've got these friends all around Europe, all around the globe. So anything that is going to continue in making the world a bit smaller in that respect and starting community is a good thing. That was the venues. Should I do venues or subsidies?
Let's come back to that. I feel like, I think is an important point to make, because I think that we are in a situation now where the world is smaller by the nature of globalization and by the nature of the internet. I think we were in a situation maybe 10 years ago where it'd be a very privileged position to even encounter somebody from somewhere new. And I think the fact that you guys have been able to galvanize a family that mobilize in those issues, I think that, whether it's from being fans of a band or being, part of a wider community, the fact that now is commonplace, and I think you're very much at the front end of that. And I think that, by being one of the bands that, goes into Russia at a time where people don't go into Russia, and show people from Russia that, we're not all going to judge you by, those actions. I think that, without this kind of freedom of movement that we have, and without these wider discussions, it's going to be very difficult for those kids that are growing up seeing what the rest of the world looks like on the internet and not being able to connect.
Yeah, I've got an interesting perspective on freedom of movement. So I'd like to paint a picture for you. It's Wednesday evening. You've just come back from Buckingham Palace and you're Theresa May. And you turn to your diary secretary and you say, what meetings have I got this week? And she'll go, you've got meetings from Barclays, you've got meetings from RBS, you've got meetings from Boeing, you've got meetings from the CBI. And every single one of those businesses is going to come in and say, we have to be in the single market or hundreds and thousands of jobs will be lost. Right? Now, fast forward 2 years. UK's been in a recession for 12 months, 18 months. Jobs are down, growth is down. So you've got a question to ask yourself. Are you going to go back to the public and say, A, I want to be outside the single market, which means no more immigrants living down the road, but here's a cost of hundreds and thousands of jobs? Or do you turn around and say, we have to be in the single market, and the cost of that is freedom of movement? That's the question you will have as Theresa May in 2 or 3 years' time. Now, what's interesting about the Norway EEA model is you have freedom of movement, but you have what they call a break clause, which effectively allows you, now Norway have never used this, to stop immigration. So I would argue, if you're Theresa May in 2.5 years' time, with the problems that she's got, I personally believe she would go back to the public and say, we have to accept freedom of movement, but do you know what? We've got this brilliant break clause, and do you know what? We don't have to let them use the NHS, and do you know what? They don't have to give them benefits. So I genuinely think there's an opportunity, if business screams loud enough, if people scream loud enough that we want freedom of movement, and that is what is the right thing to do, I think politically that is possible. So I would leave that with you.
The problem you got though, John, is that actually it's not you're going to lose complete freedom of movement. That's not what's going to happen. It's that there's going to be a very complex explanation of what freedom of movement is. And when you get into musicians, unfortunately, you are into the one category that virtually everybody that is on the side of Brexit thinks is the one they don't want. It's what is going to be termed, and please don't take this personally, it's going to be termed unskilled, unnecessary labour. I'm sorry, but it is. If you don't think there are musicians... but if you don't think there are musicians in Spain who can perform a concert, of course they can. Has anybody been through the US visa process? You have to prove you're exceptional. You have to prove that you're unbelievably famous and demonstrate history. And what concerns me about the freedom of movement argument, frankly, is that this category is one of the categories where that is going to be the trade-off. I think you're right, there will be a trade-off, but I think the trade-off will be we'll have as many of your bankers and as many of your doctors and anything else you can send us. But actually, occasional thing, that goes through the visa work permit. Can I be that doesn't mean you can't play in Europe, but this is my argument about really building up our own sustainable things here so that we create people. It's just going to cost a load of money and be a load of loopholes to jump through, and around. You're going to be fine. I could write your visa application for you right now. You're going to get in. But I'm really concerned that the guy over there from the Carnaby's isn't going to get in until his career is at a certain level. It's going to be the same problem I have getting bands into the United States. So it's not the end, but it requires us to really think about how we establish careers to the point where they are exceptional before they go over to Europe. I really hope you're right, because I've got kids who are basically grown up European, and they've got no concept of what borders are.
My point being, I don't think we should sacrifice the freedom movement we have today. I don't think we should say we can't have it. I genuinely think we can have it if we fight for it.
But I think the byproduct of that is, what about the millions of people that voted specifically to shut down that freedom of movement? Does anybody want to take a point in the anti-immigration
I'll
rhetoric.
give you a point on those people particularly, some of the more, and I think this is a really serious point for us as the music industry, some of the more serious repercussions that we're seeing of people that wanted to stem immigration and go way fucking beyond that and are outright racist, and it cannot be condoned. And as an artistic community and as a music industry, I think we have our part to play because we do have an amazing voice within the cultural sector and within media to stamp that the fuck out. Like, that's not cool. It's really not cool. And I've obviously, there's stirrings within the artist community for that, but that's something that we could do tomorrow. I mean, and there are people that did, absolutely, based on whether you think it's a bed of fucking lies or house of cards or whatever it might be. Some people we know voted for that reason.
I think you only need to go around the country and see the signs outside people's houses to know that's how people voted. It's not a London assumption. It's...
No. And it's happened in London. I mean, I've spoken to friends here that have been shouted at in the street. Fuck that. Like, absolutely fuck that. But as a community, regardless of any of the stuff we're talking about with legislation or rights or anything, I would like to see a lot of artists come forward. And there used to be, I think, it's a single Rock Against Racism and a few other things, even Red Wedge, and a lot of the different things. And I would like to see the industry come together and reform some of those things, just to instill in people. I mean, if you like to see your kids grow up, everyone I know that grew up, there's a distinct lack of borders in people's minds in a new generation, and sadly that generation didn't necessarily use their vote on this, and we can see that in the age differences, and we don't need to get into that. But I think we do have a part to play, and I think we can have as an industry, we can have a very positive impact on trying to stamp that out. And some of the stuff that Sam's doing within this, trying to have some interesting debates within certain communities. And I'm a northerner, and I'm fucking ashamed to be a northerner with some of the way that they voted and some of the behaviours that go in up there. And I'm saying that as a proud northerner.
It's not just the north. I'm a proud Essex man, and it's exactly the same. We've got to make it outside of it being a north-south thing. It's not. It's border to border. It's more to do with wealth distribution than it is to do with north and south, and we have to get away from that rhetoric.
It's to do with social attitudes, though. That's the one thing you can learn from all the charts. If you want to go off and do your research on it, you'll see social attitudes is the key thing that lets people vote this way.
These are the places when we look at that map and see where specifically and where some of the more extreme stuff's happening. Those are the places that I want artists to go into, that industry should be looking at, to go and spend some time. Let's go and talk to those communities and try and bring them back together. Because the one thing that's happening now, regardless of anything that we're saying, this division is not healthy for this country, and it's a really, really serious division. And we have a chance, I think, and I fucking hope, to stem that, because no one's happy here. Either side you look at it, and it was that close, which again is massively debatable if it should be carried, being that close. But if it is going to be carried, there's going to be people pissed off on either side, and we definitely, I think, need to play a part in trying to heal that divide, and in whatever way we can do that. And we know that music does cross borders, and it does cross religions, and it does cross races. Let's bring that good side out of it, I think.
Well, I think it's eminently possible. I mean, the day when I sat in my front room and watched a crowd of anti-apartheid supporters sing Free Nelson Mandela in South Africa, I was, that's kind of, my heart almost jumped out of my chest. I mean, obviously we were banned, it was banned, but they still heard it and they got to sing it. And that was brilliant. So yes, it does go that far. The one place where we needed people to hear Free Nelson Mandela in South Africa, they actually heard it and were actually singing it. So yes, of course we can do that. And yes, we should be. I mean, because at the moment, if somebody says to me, do you want to go and play in Bedford? I'm like, oh, really? Because that's the headquarters of the EDL, isn't it? Bedford. No, seriously, it is. So when somebody said, do you want to... Sorry?
You're not wrong, it just amused me.
No, but it's just the thought of bed. Well, I'm glad I amused you. That's kind of what I'm here for.
It reminded me of...
You're right, all right. Well, you can tell me afterwards. No, the reality is that, nobody thinks, oh, yeah, let's go and do a gig in Bedford. It's not the first thing you think of, but yeah, that is where we should be going. We should be going to Bedford, and we should be going to
the Esquires.
Sorry?
Bedford Esquires.
Esquires. Well, no, I've played there, but Esquires is all right, though. But then you walk round outside, you go the next day, you're walking around Bedford in the town centre, and you're just thinking, actually, I think, you're looking for snipers virtually, because it is that bad. Sorry? No, I like Paul McCartney. No, look. I like Paul McCartney.
Like Bedford.
Paul's back again.
Right,
He's a top man. No, I'm just saying that Rock Against
I'd like to see Paul
Racism...
McCartney go to Bedford. Is that something that we can
No,
start on Twitter?
I think we need to go to places that we don't go to often. Do you know what I mean? I think that's a crucial thing that we need to take from this as a cultural industry. But that's my opinion, and now I'm going to open it up to the floor. Is there any more questions? Any points of order? Okay, gentleman here.
I just want to ask a question about, because a lot we talked about is the sort of the ground-based, the underground and the music scene. I just want to ask, with everything that's gone on, I'd just be interested in you, do you get much solidarity from the bigger players in the music industry in terms of artists, record labels? Is this something that's purely affecting... I mean, like you were saying about venues, I'm just interested, is there anything there, or is it completely... Every man for himself.
Okay, so the question is, do we get solidarity from the top? And who would like to take that first? I think.
Basically, I know it sounds like it's a dreamland, but yes, actually, how about that? We had to get organised, and we had to really demonstrate that we were all acting together, and that we had a clear set of asks, and we wanted this done and that done. But I don't know if anybody knows, but 6 months ago, we actually changed the law in the UK. We got a parliamentary amendment to the Town and Country Planning Act that stops venues from being closed because offices and flats being built next to them. So you can't do that anymore. How do we do that? Actually, we worked through an organisation called UK Music. We had support from PRS for Music, who are part of UK Music. We had support from the Musicians' Union. But again, it's about being really organised and really focused on a set of asks and saying, I need this changed, I want that done. This is the reason why. This is what will happen if you don't do it. This is what will happen if you do it. So 2 years ago, if you'd asked me, I said, there's no way they're going to listen to us. I was watching venues close like you wouldn't believe, and it was just, that was going to be a disaster. But 2 years later, it's been a lot of hard work. I'm knackered. But yes is the answer.
Fucking good job as well. But
absolutely.
Thank you. But did you mean artists and record companies, or were you talking about the organisations?
That as well. I'm interested to know, like, EMIs and things like that. Are they backing you with the artists, backing you, the big artists who get it? Do they forget it after they get onto the big labels? Is it completely something that as soon as they...
No, I think a lot of the artists that I speak to are very aware of issues all down the chain. Don't get me wrong, people that are earning millions of pounds, I'm sure, don't lose some sleep over things overnight. But we are seeing some artists. There's a particular initiative at the moment with YouTube. There's a large amount of artists that are taking YouTube to task. And with some support from some sectors of the labels. But the thing that we could galvanise out of any of this is that actually when we're in the face of adversity, it's a time for people to come closer together. And within the label sphere, we saw Martin Mills from Beggars and some guys from Universal come together in a joint press release, which doesn't fucking happen. You know, the indie in the major world, and it totally depends who you are. But I think that across there are people that hate their labels still. That's never going to change, I don't think. And there are labels that don't get on with their art, and blah blah blah, petty nonsense. But for issues as big as this, I think that there are things, and we export a lot as well. And I don't want to get into too much of that because I genuinely don't know enough about the figures. But we do have an incredibly strong export from here, and there's really fundamental things about manufacture. A lot of our manufacture is done in various places, and that there's a knock-on effect that will affect the entire industry. So for us not to look at it collectively is a farce. So at some point the industry has to come together on some issues, and again it's sort of forward-thinking labels and artists that will want to. And again, that's where the rights organisations come into this, because bizarrely sometimes they're the glue that pulls that together. Because a lot of time you get your artists over here, your labels over there, and sometimes it's the rights organisations that oil the wheels between those conversations, and they're an important part of that infrastructure. But a lot of these things we're talking about, with all the doom and gloom, this can be a positive thing for all of us. And even if it makes us all look at ourselves and go, all right, You know, what's wrong within this ecosystem? And I'll tell you, there's a lot wrong in the ecosystem. But this is a good chance for us to look at it across every stakeholder in this ecosystem should be talking. And I sincerely hope a lot of the larger artists will help out the new artists. And a lot of the stuff we're talking about here is keeping new artists going, and that's regardless of the EU. Put that aside for one moment. As an industry, we've been shit at supporting new artists, and it's something I rant about a lot. And I hope, if anything, this encourages us to at least look at that. Because do you want to see the same fucking band headline every festival ever? I mean, I've ranted about this to friends at Live Nation and stuff. It's the same lineups every year. And I mean, I like Metallica as much as the next person, but I don't want to see them every year, or Maiden, or, you know. Let's spend some time, and that's a very important thing in what we're talking about across all of the industries here. We want next year's headliners, and we want next year's headliners that are going to go to Europe because they have got the money for visas if they need them, or they are going to go to the States. Then that starts with us here, having an infrastructure and a right system that supports them, and having organisations that support them. So if there's any takeaway from all of this as an industry, my message to the entire industry would be, fucking come together and let's sort that out, regardless of anything else that's happening. Let's get our house in order and make sure that we have a sustainable infrastructure for new artists and established artists that we can proudly push out to any country, regardless if we need visas or not, or whatever it might be. But let's get that in order here.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the answer is yes. We do an enormous amount of work with the labels, do an enormous amount of work with the big writers and the big artists. I think the truth is they're big companies, they're full of lawyers, they're very commercial, they make their minds up pretty damn quickly. I've already seen their proposals and what they want following Brexit. So that's the challenge back to the industry. Come together quickly, through a body or through somebody, pick your 3 ideas or your 3 wants, and then say them, and then negotiate with the labels, negotiate with the publishers.
That's the power here. If we can galvanise those key messages, and that should be that if our industry watch this on afterwards, galvanise that message, and let's go strong. If we're going to do it, let's go in and go, this actually is what we want. And we stand far more chance of getting it than being fraction, which we always do. We are terrible as that as an industry.
Okay, well, let's, you know, as an industry in an environment that doesn't require delegate badges and doesn't require really expensive memberships and is open to everybody, I really like to throw it to the floor for people to say what it is they feel that they want, because we've kind of gone from a conversation about where this is to an EU to a conversation about how we revolutionise our industry. So if there are people that have got points that they want to raise in this environment, please come forward.
I was just going to sort of further on from what you were saying and concepts of sort of community and everything. I've sort of been able to tour manage a few bands at a very, very grassroots level in mainland Europe, mainly because doing, 10, 12 days across Germany and the like, you get looked after much better, you get paid a lot more and everything. If we lose, the possibility to travel, what can artists, and especially artists, what should they be doing to kind of re-establish the sense of community in the UK? Because I was a promoter for 10 years in Norwich, and there was pre-social media, you could get people out, handing flyers out and everything. Now, we all know, Facebook events, none of that works. How do we get people to go to grassroots gigs? Like, it's fine when you get to a certain level and you have, labels and managers and everything. At that level, when you need those people coming through, what can we do to get people coming to those shows?
Okay, firstly, Rao, do you want to give us a background on the difference between European touring and, European touring and ex-European touring?
There's a massive disparity, really. Like as you say, European venues. I mean, I don't want to make it out like you get treated like kings, but like compared to UK venues, there's a massive difference. And there seems to be I don't know, it's like a pride as well with the people that work there. Maybe it's just because they know that funding is secured, so they know their job is secured. Whereas in the UK, working at a venue, you might not feel that same pride. But the enthusiasm's certainly there, but it's a lot easier, I guess, to run a venue, to make it enjoyable, comfortable for everyone, the punters and the artists. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we have our sort of... Is it more the sort of panto venues that are sort of subsidised in the UK? There's not much, really, is there, in terms of offering...
Distribution of funding from the Arts Council, for example, 96% of their funding that goes into music doesn't hit any of these venues. And also, see, it's really difficult with these things, because I'm very open about it. I don't mind if opera gets funded at all. I think it's great. But at the moment, if there's going to be an argument about there being limited funding, the distribution of that funding is obviously wrong. You know, we're not funding people so they can do those 10 or 12 date tours in the UK. And I think we also need to accept that there's been a spiral of decline. It's not a simple message. Venues don't close just because there's a neighbourhood complaint about noise. They close over a long period of time because people get dispirited because the licensing laws don't support them, and the police are always coming in, and not enough people go to the show, and the band are really pissed off because the dressing room smells, and they've got to supply fucking hummus again. And so, I just think people have just got very dispirited, and this is what I really, really wanted to bring to this, Sam, is this idea of this Summer of Love is all, to me, outside of it, looks like it should all be about positivity. And I that's what I kind of want to keep pushing, is let's get that positive thing back. It's so easy to turn that spiral of decline into a spiral of virtue heading upwards.
So to go in those three venues, three world-class venues in Groningen, I mean, I've been to those venues and they are amazing. I've not seen anywhere in the UK that looks like those venues in Groningen. One of them's got a big glass thing you can look out. It goes black, it's soundproof, it sounds amazing, it looks brilliant. You can get a perfect view of the whole, Yep. But anyway, is that specifically due to EU funding, or is that due to a network of other things?
It's directly due to the Netherlands government fund. It's identifying grassroots music as an incubator of talent and investing in it very, very heavily. They did use some EU money, so obviously we've got to find a replacement for that. But I want to tell you about France, because France has a tax. 2% of all live music ticket sales goes into a fund, and if you run a grassroots music venue, you can write a risk assessment saying, I'm going to put on 40 shows that everybody hates because it's culturally important to do so. I'm going to lose 400,000 euros. Can I have it, please? And they'll give it to you. And that enables them to put on bands that nobody's ever heard of and promote them really well, because the money's gone out of the promotion. I know it feels really bad if you're an artist, but if you're trying to run a venue and you've got guys saying, I need 500 quid for the electricity and I need £5,000 for the rent and £40,000 for the rates and whatever else it is in London, you're going to pay those. You're not going to be able to pay to come up with new and innovative ways of promoting. This is a really important point about the distribution of the funding. You are right, these venues in Groningen are absolutely stunning. But back to your question, what happens when you've got an absolutely stunning venue? Everybody wants to go there. You get queues of people outside. And they'll queue to see a bloke playing the flute out of his arse, because
I'd queue for that.
Because it's going to be a great night out. You're going to see something you haven't seen before. That's something that's challenging. The light show is amazing. You should come to the Television
good job, I bought a flute.
So we put that on in Luton, yeah?
That would shake them up, wouldn't it?
Fluting.
Oh, you voted Brexit. Here's a bloke with a flute up his arse.
No, but the fact is, I don't know if this is the case, but it seems to me as money from shifting units, as they always used to call it, has declined, people are now earning their money from touring. So ticket prices appear to have gone up. I don't know. Obviously everything seems more expensive than it did when I was a kid. But ticket prices have gone up, and maybe has that had anything to do with the fact that that more money is being taken out of the venues by artists?
No, actually, it very specifically, the distribution of the rise in the funding has hit only the top end of the market. It is still £5 to see 3 bands on a Tuesday night in Bromsgrove, and you can't actually open the venue for that. That's another problem we've got. We've got to get this value of what it is back in front of the audience.
And as you said earlier, the £50 support. You know, when I was a promoter 12 years ago, it was £50 support. Still £50 support now. And that £50 support is not the same £50 that pays the petrol, pays
Certainly
the van
not
hire.
this week.
But okay, now any more questions from the floor?
I'd like to kind of take a look now at arts and music in schools, because this is something we touched on earlier, and I think, is essentially the future of the music industry, and it's people who are coming through. And, I know that I wouldn't have had the support I needed to step out as a singer-songwriter, as a musician, as an artist, if my school hadn't held extracurricular activities, which I know have now been cut at my school, and I'm sure have been cut at so many schools across the country. So now that we've got, essentially, I feel as a young person, we don't have a government that prioritises that in any way. How can we come together and create something that actually provides and ensures that young people still have access to that creativity, that nurture that, we've all experienced? How can we ensure that that still happens, especially for children that aren't privileged, that, can't afford it?
Well, can I say, first of all, that I came from a time when there wasn't extracurricular. I mean, we may have, faffed about after school and put on plays for each other or whatever, but there wasn't. That didn't exist before, but still we managed to get into music. So I'm just wondering how it was we did that. Did we do it via other means? And are those other means now available, or are they horrendously expensive? Like, if you, for instance, did you do music classes at, a music, I work for a music charity, and they do after-school classes for kids, and they're always scrabbling around for money. They are reasonably well funded at the moment, but it's always fairly short term. So if those kinds of things were funded, so you can't necessarily afford to do music classes in every school, but at least there's somewhere that kids can go after school, which keeps them off the streets because they can't go to West End nightclubs at 15 like I used to. They have to have... No, but it's the truth, because that's how I would be going to see bands, or I'd be going to nightclubs. They can't do that now. So we have to find something for them to do. I work at a music project that does provide stuff for kids in my local community, which is why I know they don't get in bands, because they're not. They do stuff like this. They go... They learn to use Logic, and they make their own music. So I think we have to support those sort of projects. At the moment, are we going to get music and everything put back into schools? Is it going to go back on the curriculum to the extent it did before? I don't know. But what about having more music projects? There are big ones like the Roundhouse in London. There's small ones like Raw Material, where I work in Brixton. That maybe it's those sort of things. It's almost grassroots again, isn't it? I mean, that's been going for 20 years. So, I mean, they've not just sort of flown in overnight. So maybe it's that. Maybe we've got to do that. What do you think?
It's an interesting question for somebody. I took a drama degree. I did 3 years of drama, and I think certainly drama at the time was one of the most oversubscribed courses at universities. Music is, in many instances, the same. To your first question, no, I don't think this government in particular is going to change its mind on music education. My second point is more fundamental, which I think undercuts the whole debate we've had tonight. It's too easy to take for granted that always be somebody who wants to be a musician and who's talented enough to be a musician. And there will always be, in the top 10, there'll always be 5 UK artists. It's not true. But we've allowed the policymakers, the government, the Arts Council, whoever it is, to take for granted the success of our music industry. So that's where I think we have to go back and say, you have to, if you rob us at the bottom, there'll be nothing left at the top. So I think that's to me, whether it be about Brexit, whether it be about copyright law, whether it be about venues, whether it be about arts funding, whether it be education, don't take for granted something you think you are always going to have. So this is, I think, with the debate we should be pushing forward.
Fantastic point. Okay, so we're going to wrap it up now. We're open for a couple of hours afterwards. We've got a DJ who's brilliant. I really encourage you to just kind of hang out and for us to build relationships outside of just speaking at panels. I think I'm going to pass it round for everybody to do a closing statement. But for me, one of the most important things that we need to do as a music industry specifically is to encourage more things like this. In my time as 12 years as a political musician, and I've been involved in every organisation there is under the sun, and it's really difficult to find free things to go to for artists. And the reason for doing this in particular is an encouragement to do more. So if you've enjoyed it or you've learned something, if you've been well bored, I apologise. But, this is going to be videoed, this is going to be podcasted. I just encourage you to share it and open up these conversations, because we're going to have one specifically on streaming because, Safe Harbour, I kind of knew about the policies. I didn't know it was called Safe Harbour. Nothing about it sounds that safe.
Actually, I was going to say not sure how safe it's. But also just before
I'm just about to give it. No. My only time to be a chair. This is going to be the time to be a chair. We're going to have a time to speak and have closing moments. Sorry, I didn't put my hand up there. I felt really rude then. But that's going to be some YouTube comments, guaranteed. But anyway. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being a part of this. Thank you to the panel, to Rhoda, to Rao, to Sammy, to John, to Mark. Thank you. This is people giving up their own time. Thank you for everybody at the Macbeth for providing this framework and this infrastructure. This is a movement based on the idea of free information and free conversation. So everyone's going to have a couple of minutes each at the end to summarise, but thank you for giving up your time. But we need more stuff like this, because shit's going to get hairy. And we are supposed to be the front line of counterculture. We always have been. And now's the time to be again. So thank you very much for your involvement today. Right, Mark first.
I don't think I've got much to add to that. Actually, it's a bit of a rally call, isn't it? I honestly believe that if you can organise this kind of grouping and come up with some clear things, there are existing organisations, or you can form your own organisation to make very positive stuff happen. I think it's incredibly unfortunate that we're having to do that in an atmosphere where we've made, frankly, a catastrophic decision. But everything's an opportunity, in my view. Every bad thing you hear about, every crisis you hear about, galvanises people to do something. I hope this is one of those times that it will galvanise people to do something.
Can I just interrupt and say one about this word decision? I know those
Hold on. Jamie? We've got a renegade on the floor. Let's give him a mic.
Yeah, renegade, yeah.
It's got...
it's just this word decision. We're 2 weeks in from the referendum. This may seem absolutely obvious to everybody, but I just think it's, and what John has said, we've got the government we've got. We've had 2 weeks since this vote, and then there's been all this political turmoil, and now we have, it looks likely we have the Prime Minister we're going to have. And she is under, and that government is under immense pressure. They've got a tiny minority at the moment. They may decide to go to the country again, in which they may be completely screwed if they go to the country. They're in an extremely precarious position. And I just want to say, it's been really interesting listening to all these, specific and different aspects where, of the music business, which can become more healthy and more supportive to small artists and all this kind of stuff. But what you said about the music business coming together, right now, this is not a done deal. There's a huge compromise that's going to take place. As you said, John, quite rightly, Theresa May's got a choice. She can turn around to her tiny minority who instigated this, caused this whole thing, caused David Cameron to make this preposterous hubristic, arrogant, risky decision to have the referendum, she can turn around and go, hooray, hooray, I've saved you, everything's great, we're not going to have any of those nasty foreigners anymore. She isn't going to do that. She's going to have to fudge this, she's going to have to compromise it. And now is the time, as you rightly say, the music business is this massive, world-beating, world-famous entity that comes out of the UK, and the opportunity for the music business, among other groups in the country, to pummel this precarious, vulnerable Prime Minister and this precarious, vulnerable government, it's an amazing opportunity. That's just what I want to say. When you said the word decision, it's not a decision yet. There's a whole load of things can happen in the next weeks and months.
I'd like to come back to that point just before I pass it round to the chair. I think that one of the things that we have to be aware as a music industry is that we are so focused on cities. There are parts of this country where this is a decision. We risk isolating 10 million people plus if, as a music industry, we stand undemocratically against it. I'm not saying, this is me trying to play devil's advocate in this situation. I think one of the things that we really have to be important as a cultural entity is realising that the people, that this isn't seen as a disaster in big parts of the country. This is seen as a celebration. 37%. Yeah, but the statistics are based on 2,500, subsects. The one that was in Wales was in Cardiff. It wasn't in the valleys. Taking polls from universities and from cultural institutions in cities, listening to cities, empowering cities is why we have disjointed suburbs. And I think the music industry, and the reason for me, my personal belief is that the music industry, our first thing to do is go to those places and listen. Too many people are saying, this is what we need. Now we need to go, what do you need? And I think that, you're right. I think that this government is in a situation of, it's lose-lose. Do you empower, do you take this debate to Parliament and do you have MPs that say, no, the country's wrong? Or do you go straight to the Queen and say, don't worry about Parliament? This is a lose-lose situation, and the music industry and cultures industry, this is our opportunity to go to the places and find out why and to ask questions. And that's what this experiment is. This is an experiment in doing this here so people can get off their arse and do it in the places that everyone goes, Lincoln and Bedford and Luton and Southend. I live in those places. Do you know what I mean? I tour in those places. They are the places I go every time. And I tell you, our industry is wrong. We call them C markets, but they're not C markets. They buy records, they buy T-shirts. They are A markets for the people that are our customers. Counterculture thrives in the areas that are pushed down. Yet we think that we've got to get them to get the train to go to cities. We need to go to them, and we need to go to them now. Because what you're saying is absolutely right. This is not a done deal. But that is going to be a parliamentary discussion, and this needs to be a nationwide discussion. I'm absolutely not trying to disagree with you. I just think that this is the moment as an industry where we put our money where our mouth is, and we actually go to the people that go to the festivals, that go to the venues, the people that have to travel 45 minutes to see their favourite band every fucking time that band plays anywhere near them. Now it's our turn to go to them. Because a lot of their parents, a lot of their friends, their family members, their grandparents, their teachers, people in their community have made a decision that some of them aren't happy with. This is a metropolitan versus suburban divide. On maps, on statistics, on voting, it can't be that culturally. Right, anyway, let's go back to the recap. But thank you for that point. I think it's a really important thing that needs to be said. Thank you.
I am genuinely grateful for your intervention, because I'm not sure how I could have topped my don't take music for granted remarks last time. Look, I'm going to slightly disagree with you, because actually I think, do you know what, it is a done deal. This is a fundamental point, though. What is the deal? That's the question, all right? And Sam, you're right. It's a divided nation. And do you know what? If this becomes a conversation about economics versus immigration, the debate on immigration is going to be vile. So, This is what I say to you. This is what I say to you is how do we make that deal the right deal for the music industry, for our fans, for the country? And that's where I think everyone should be heard. And what I will say as my final point is I will speak to Sam afterwards, but we'll send out some details. Anyone who wants to get involved with the campaigns that PRS runs, who wants to come to dinners with MPs, who wants to sign letters to commissioners, we'll help you meet your MPs. We'll help you. We'll tell you who they are. We'll tell you when their surgeries are. We'll tell you the issues. So we'll share that with you because this is what we want to be doing, is empowering you guys. So I'll give that to Sam. We'll push that out.
Thank you.
Within the debate of this, I have nothing more to add. But what I was going to say a moment before was back to the very existence of these types of events in supporting Sam and this particular movement. This is the first of these, and what we can all do.
It's not just me. There's lots of us.
And lots of people. But well done again. But to go away and support this as a movement within that, and encourage these sort of events to take place. Do go on social media and tweet about it. Go and post it on Facebook. Let's try and get some awareness going that this very initiative exists, and whatever others like it may be. But support that, and let's keep having conversations. So this is, we're fresh into this. It's a couple of weeks. Who fucking knows? Genuinely, where we're going to go. Look at what's happened in the last 2 weeks. What is left of our governments? You couldn't make this shit up, could you? But just within that, let's keep it going. Let's keep the positivity going and keep the conversations going. And again, hats off to you for organising it.
Thank you, Sammy.
I think it's a really important point about touring the C markets, as you rightly pointed out, which is a horrible sort of industry wank term. I think these suburbs. We sort of every 2-3 years we seem to do a tour like that. Where the last one, it took us to places like the Pier at Weston-super-Mare, playing a gig at the end of that. To get into these places that touring bands don't normally play is really important. And I guess there's some pressure that I can apply to my contemporaries, but as well bringing local sort of smaller bands on bigger tours. I think is something that so many bands could do more. I just wanted to pick up on the freedom of movement thing. I've been stuck on many occasions at borders. One of the worst ones was between Turkey and Greece, so coming back into the EU for 48 hours. And that wasn't fun, but that's about as bad it perhaps would get for a sort of an established band. Whereas, the smaller bands who would possibly have to get visas, carnets, which for anyone that doesn't know is like a list of every single piece of your equipment with the price. It's a horrible form to fill out, and it costs, depending on how much equipment you've got, it costs like £500 to £2,000, and you have to renew that every year. So for a smaller band, that's immediately debilitating. So it seems to me that it's always going to be the smaller sort of struggling, or just starting bands and artists and acts that are going to really get the horrible end of any deal that comes out. So I think it's important to fight to make sure that doesn't happen. The last thing would be the scientific community, like the thing that they rely on more than anything is collaboration, and that EU is something that has brought together so many amazing science projects, and I think it's exactly the same for music as well. Like, cultural exchange is like the bedrock of civilization, really, and so just anything that we can all do to make sure that continues to be the case is worth doing.
Yeah.
I think after I got back from Glastonbury and the result had kind of sunk in, I was in my local Tesco's, which is open till 11 by chance. You don't need to know that, it's just a bit of extra information. And there's a guy in there who does merchandising, which is shelf filling. He's a merchandiser. He's an old American guy, and he said to me, we were having a quick chat about it because he always laughs at me with my shopping list on my phone, and he said, yeah, change isn't always good, but the good thing about change is it changes us. So that's what we have to take from this. This is not necessarily a good change, but it may change us for the better. So if we all work together, this will be a magnificent change. It could be a revolution in terms of the way the music business works. It's going to be hard. It's not going to be easy. People don't want to necessarily give up their positions of privilege. But if we keep knocking down their doors, they may well eventually do so. And yes, there are simple things we can do. When we go and do a gig in a place, we pick up a local support band instead of bringing a support band in from somewhere else. So yes, you can support local industry. And you know what? I have been to those places. I've gigged in those places. I've had to have, you know what I mean? And there are places I may still think twice about going, you know, when you've had to have police escorts out of places because there are people sea-kyling in your audience. And I don't know if I really want to go through that again, but, you know, I'm up for a row. I'm always up for a row. It'll be fine. We'll have a go. We'll do it. No, but seriously, you know, like, as long as I think I'm going to get out all right, we should be all right. I mean, you know, literally, that was what it was like, but that is what it used to be like. I remember, I mean, I'm sorry to go into anecdote, but talking about playing Leeds in 1980, I remember Madness saying to me the first time, that was the first gig they ever did outside London, was in Leeds, and the audience smashed the windows of their van, so they had to drive back from Leeds to London in a van with no windows, because that's the sort of thing that used to happen for a laugh. So yeah, I'm going to go to those places. I'm going to go anyway. But there has to be a point where, you know, there will be a point where actually, you know what, I'm just going to leave that for the white musicians. I'm not going to go to those places and have people, because you can get tired of that. But yes, when you go somewhere, pick up a local support band. It's really important. And do you know who your local MP is? Find out. Don't laugh. It's a serious question. Do you know who your local MP is? If you know who your local MP is, find out when their surgeries are. If you don't know how to find out, their PRS will help you. But go and see your local MP. Make a nuisance of yourself. I mean, email them. For a start, email them. That's their job, to respond to you as a member of their constituency. It's their job. And they will do it. Most of them are reasonably good at their jobs when it comes to the local level. So make a nuisance of yourself. Find out what they want you to moan about and go and do it. Moan. You know, be there. Write letters. It's fine. We'll all do it. But if we all do it, it does actually make a difference. And yes, write the songs. Write the songs, you know. Go out, write the songs, and go and write the songs and go and sing them to people in the places where they're arguing against you. Just go and face them up. Because that's your job. Your job isn't really to go and talk to them. Your job is to go and sing songs to them. Because you are the troubadours. You are the news carriers. You're the people that go from place to place and tell people about what it's like somewhere else. Tell them about a world they don't necessarily see. And even if they do read about it, it's not the same as experiencing it. But make the music. Make the music, make the difference.
I think that's an absolutely fantastic place to leave it. Incredibly powerful call to arms. Thank you very much. Let's hang out, let's have a dance, let's chat. It's been incredibly arresting, thought-provoking, and I think, we got to go into this grey, murky horizon as beacons of light. That's our job. Thank you so much for coming. See you next time. Please spread the word, download the video, the podcast, and let's have a beer, have a dance, swap stories, swap information, swap saliva, whatever. Have a good night. Thank you for coming. Cheers.
Thank you, Sam.